Yeah. I've got 5 quick questions just around derivatives. Are banks reporting on their derivative exposure effectively in their financial reports so that investors have a complete understanding of what banks are exposed to?
So banks are required to comply with financial reporting standards around financial instruments, which does include derivative transactions, but the devil is in the detail as to what those accounting standards require. And I fear I could spend the rest of the afternoon going through the precise detail of how it all works. So if there's a specific example, you might be able to provide.
Well, we might give you some time to give us an on-notice discussion paper about that.
Yeah. There's some recent changes on the accounting standards around financial instruments too. It's actually very quite significant.
Because I know that, you know, significant financial crises and major corporate failures over the past decades have actually involved these sorts of products, and we've discussed it, you know, in previous iterations of this committee. Do you think the financial positions and the risks of the major banks are sufficiently reflected in their audited annual reports?
Well, look, I'd be probably guided in that by what investors say in respect of audited reports. And one of the things that we included in a report that we issued at the end of last year around various measures of audit quality was an investor survey of what they think of the quality of audited reports.
Is this report 607?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my... I can... Just let me have a look.
And I've got a question about that one in particular. In the 2019 report 607 on the audit firm inspection program, my question is, why did ASIC not report specifically on deficiencies in derivative reporting? Or did you do it in a different place? Is that what you're telling me?
It may well be because it's picked up under other categories. So, you know, two key... so it wasn't... the audit quality measures I'm talking about wasn't in ASIC report 607.
Yep.
There was a separate report that set out various potential audit quality indicators, and one of those did cover what investors think about audit quality, and there was nothing alarming in that result, but we can provide you with that report number. In relation to your question around why didn't we specifically report on derivative issues, I'll go away and check, but I suspect the answer to that question is it's actually picked up in broader categories. So two of the key areas where it's common for us to see problems in financial reports are revenue, but also impairment issues. And derivative transactions may be relevant to both those categories.
Right.
So it might just be a question of we've reported on the high level, but we haven't split it out into the individual things.
Okay, so if I can join 2 questions together.
Sure.
Did you investigate whether audit firms have adequate expertise and capability in examining derivatives as a significant product in the market? And should ASIC demand better reporting on derivatives, particularly on the notional values of exposure and counterparty risks?
Well, if I can go to the second question first, as I say, ASIC's role is not a role as a standard setter. So the explicit legislative framework that's been set up is that the Australian Accounting Standards Board sets the standards, and as I mentioned, for some time there's been a push for greater clarity around financial instruments, including derivatives, and there's recently been some significant changes to those standards. So so those changes are in train. In fact, they may have even commence for some companies, but that's the second bit of the question. And apologies, I'm going to need you to repeat the first part of the question. Sorry.
So I think the issue here is that, as John indicated, the way we cut the results hasn't drawn out derivatives particularly as being an issue.
Yep.
And so we can, and it also hasn't been highlighted, certainly to me, as being a particular issue that we're concerned about, that there's a poor reporting, or certainly not seeing poor auditing issues, but we can go back and review.
So my question's around the competence, because really, if you look at it long-term, if we go to the failures of the past decade, we've got long-term capital management, 1998, Enron, 2001, Lehman Brothers, global financial crisis, Greek government debt, 2008. All of them were related to derivatives. So it's sitting there as a potential high-level incendiary risk from, historical precedent?
So your question around capability...
And this will have to be the final
That's
question.
it. I'm done, thank you.
I know with the introduction of the new accounting standards, which includes standards on leasing, amongst other things, financial instruments, there has been a concerted effort amongst the profession to train their staff to make sure that they will be able to apply these new standards as they're coming in. In fact, I've been on the public record saying the suite of new standards that have been introduced are the most significant changes in accounting standards since Australia adopted IFRS, the International Financial Reporting Standards, back in the early 2000s. So it is very significant. I have seen significant effort that's been employed by the profession to make sure that staff are adequately trained for these very important changes that are coming through.
Thank you. Thanks.